It started with a whisper. A tense message passed through the corridors of Buckingham Palace just minutes before dawn. One senior aide described it as a bolt of lightning in a silent room. According to Palace insiders, King Charles had just confronted Prime Minister Keir Starmer in one of the most explosive private exchanges of the monarch's reign. And tonight, the truth about that clash is finally spilling into the open. This story isn't just a disagreement. Before we roll the footage, just one thing. If you enjoy our work, drop a like and hit subscribe. Over 98% of you are watching without subscribing. Let's change that right now. It's free for you, but it fuels everything we do. Subscribed. Perfect. Now enjoy the video. It's a political earthquake. And what happened behind those gilded doors has left both Westminster and the palace shaken to their core. 3 weeks ago, Starmer made a move that insiders now call reckless, provocative and constitutionally incendiary. A move that placed King Charles in the centre of a geopolitical game he never wanted to play. But the most shocking part, no one saw it coming, not even the king. It all began during what the government tried to present as a simple diplomatic visit to Washington. Calm, controlled, predictable, until it wasn't. With cameras rolling and global networks broadcasting live, Starmer reached into his briefcase, pulled out a sealed royal envelope and placed it directly into Donald Trump's hands. A personal invitation from King Charles for a full state visit, except that invitation was not meant to be revealed publicly. Not yet, not there, not like that. According to 3 separate palace officials, the King's private secretary learned about the stunt at the exact same moment the world did, by watching the BBC broadcast from Washington. One aide reportedly muttered, "He didn't, please tell me he didn't." Another simply walked out of the room. Inside the palace, shock turned to anger. The king had been preparing an entirely different strategy for managing the unpredictable return of Donald Trump. A strategy built carefully with Foreign Office diplomats, constitutional advisors and Commonwealth representatives. A slow, intentional approach, quiet meetings, private conversations, nothing flashy, nothing political. The exact opposite of what Starmer unleashed on live television. And that's when the real crisis began. The revelation didn't just derail months of royal planning, it triggered a constitutional standoff the public was never supposed to know about. According to one source who was present during the King's briefing, Charles placed his reading glasses on the table and said, in a tone described as cold, controlled and deeply disappointed, "This is not how we conduct state relations. In palace language, that's thunder." But the deeper problem wasn't just that Starmer jumped the gun, it was the timing, the worst possible timing, because just days earlier, Trump had stunned the world by declaring that the United States should consider bringing Canada into the Union as the 51st state. Most people thought it was bluster. Many laughed it off as typical Trump showmanship. But palace advisors didn't laugh. They panicked. Charles isn't just the King of the United Kingdom, he is constitutionally the King of Canada, a monarch tasked with protecting the sovereignty of an entire nation Trump had just publicly threatened to absorb. And then Starmer forced Charles into a situation no British monarch has ever faced, hosting a state dinner for a leader who is challenging the sovereignty of a Commonwealth nation under his crown. That's not just awkward. It's historically unprecedented. Constitutional experts call it a nightmare scenario. Oxford professor Sarah Matthews put it bluntly to The Guardian, the monarch cannot be seen legitimising a threat to a Commonwealth realm. Yet Starmer's Oval Office stunt pushed Charles into exactly that position. One senior palace official described it as a constitutional ambush. Another said, "The Prime Minister has created a crisis entirely of his own making, and the King is being dragged into the fallout." Behind the scenes, anger simmered. Meetings grew sharper, phone calls shorter. Communication between Downing Street and Buckingham Palace became rigid, formal and noticeably frosty. According to insiders, the King requested daily briefings on the situation, a rare move signalling deep concern. People close to Charles say he felt blindsided, humiliated, used. Starmer brushed off the criticism. His team insisted it was a completely appropriate diplomatic gesture. But diplomats weren't convinced, nor were royal advisers. And when BBC political editor Andrew Marr described Starmer's Washington performance as oddly theatrical and alarmingly unstrategic, that criticism spread like wildfire. Social media erupted. Oh man, cringe, embarrassing, political cosplay. These were some of the words trending on X and TikTok. But the public embarrassment was nothing compared to the backlash brewing behind closed doors. The palace began quietly assessing the damage, not just to royal dignity, but to Commonwealth trust. In Ottawa, government insiders expressed concern that Charles was being dragged into a political spectacle. In Canberra, officials warned that any appearance of royal complicity in Trump's comments could renew Republican sentiment. The diplomatic alarm bells were ringing loudly. Starmer didn't hear them, or chose not to. As the storm spread, palace advisers desperately searched for options. Could the invitation be quietly delayed? Could the visit be downgraded to a working meeting? Could Charles himself step back? Each option carried risk. Each could spark its own political backlash. And then, according to senior sources, came the moment that triggered the now infamous clash between King and Prime Minister. Starmer insisted the visit must go forward at full scale. Horse guards, state banquet, 21-gun salute, the whole show. The King, who had tried to remain neutral, finally pushed back. Hard. According to someone present, his tone was calm but steely. A constitutional monarchy, he said, cannot be used as a political instrument. Those words, simple as they sound, stunned the room. Because in the coded world of royal language, that was a warning. A sharp, unmistakable warning. For a brief moment, Starmer reportedly froze. He understood the gravity, he understood the line being drawn. But then he doubled down, insisting it was essential for Britain's strategic interests. It was at that moment, insiders say, the King realised Starmer wasn't just acting impulsively, he was acting arrogantly, dismissing centuries of protocol, undermining constitutional balance, and placing his own political agenda above the Crown's authority. A senior advisor later said, the King felt disrespected, not as a person, as an institution. Meanwhile, Trump, blissfully unaware of the constitutional storm, excitedly told supporters he was looking forward to the biggest, most beautiful state visit ever. He spoke of banquets, pageantry, the carriage thing. Palace staff, according to one insider, nearly choked on their tea because they had no idea how to host a president threatening a Commonwealth nation without creating an international scandal. Behind the scenes, speechwriters struggled, protocol teams panicked, diplomats scrambled. How do you write a speech that welcomes a guest whose policy threatens your own realm? How do you celebrate an alliance while avoiding the elephant in the room? An elephant wearing a red tie and promising to annex Canada? The tension grew. The polls shifted. The public noticed. A YouGov survey showed a sharp drop in confidence in Starmer's handling of foreign affairs. Downing Street dismissed it as noise. The palace did not. Inside Labour ranks, murmurs began, whispers of frustration. Some MPs accused Starmer of treating the monarchy as a prop. One senior figure reportedly said, this isn't boldness, it's foolishness. And then came another twist. A leaked memo from the Foreign Office revealed that diplomats had strongly advised delaying the invitation until after the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Their recommendation? Proceed cautiously, risk of destabilising Commonwealth relations significant. Starmer ignored it. When the memo leaked to Sky News, the backlash intensified. Conservatives seized the moment. Liz Truss called it an astonishing diplomatic failure.
1 year.
Even moderate Tories joined in. But the most damaging criticism came from former Labour advisers, people who understood how dangerous it was to provoke the monarchy. One strategist said, in British politics, you never pick a fight with the palace. Ever. Yet here Starmer was, locked in a silent, escalating Cold War with the King. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood turned icy. Charles withdrew from several government-adjacent events with polite but unmistakable excuses. The press called it scheduling. Insiders called it strategy. The royal silence grew louder, more deliberate, more chilling. One historian explained it simply: the crown rarely speaks, but when it withholds presence, the message is unmistakable. And then, as pressure reached boiling point, the king made a move no one expected. A private meeting at Balmoral, limited staff, no leaks, absolute secrecy, but someone inside couldn't hold it in. And here's what they revealed. The king laid out 3 warnings. First, the monarchy cannot be forced into political theatre. Second, the Commonwealth cannot be treated as collateral damage. Third, trust once broken does not fully return. Starmer, according to this insider, was visibly tense. He knew what was being said. He knew what wasn't being said. A constitutional crisis was now on the table, a very real one. If the king felt the government was misusing the crown, he had tools, quiet tools, subtle tools, tools that could create political chaos without ever breaking a single constitutional rule. Senior civil servants know this. Military advisors know it. Diplomats know it. Only Starmer seemed to underestimate it. As news of the clash leaked in fragments through political channels, the world reacted. Canadian media lit up with concern. Australian commentators questioned Britain's judgment. American reporters asked whether Trump's visit was diplomatic spectacle or constitutional hazard. And then Europe responded. Several EU diplomats told Reuters they were baffled by Britain's strategy. One described it as diplomatic self-harm. And through it all, the king remained silent, watching, calculating, considering his next move. Meanwhile, Downing Street scrambled to contain the fallout. Officials insisted the visit was still full steam ahead. But palace sources said something very different. They revealed that 3 separate contingency plans were now in place. A scaled-down visit, a postponed visit, and in the most dramatic scenario, a full cancellation citing international circumstances. Any of those would be humiliating for Starmer, devastating for his authority, and politically fatal for a prime minister already struggling with polls, domestic unrest, and fracturing party unity. The public doesn't know it yet, but the stakes of this clash are enormous. If the relationship between the king and the prime minister deteriorates further, it could weaken Britain's diplomatic standing, strain Commonwealth ties, and send shockwaves through the civil service. Every part of Britain's unwritten constitution relies on trust, cooperation, respect. And right now, all 3 are hanging by a thread. As we move closer to September, the month of Trump's planned state visit, the pressure will only intensify. Will Charles quietly bend to political pressure, or will he push back even harder? Will Starmer double down, or will he retreat? And what happens if Trump steps into London expecting a lavish welcome only to walk into a diplomatic minefield instead? Tonight's revelations raise more questions than answers. Has Starmer damaged his relationship with the monarchy beyond repair? Could this clash trigger a deeper constitutional showdown? And will the king take further action to protect the crown from political misuse? We're watching a historic confrontation unfold in real time. Stay ready, because the next chapter will be even more explosive. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist before it hits the headlines, make sure you subscribe.